All right, welcome back. This is lecture 3, which is on schedules. Types of schedules. So there's different types of schedules that you will see on a construction project. First one is a more simple schedule. This is a high level detailed schedule. It's called a milestone schedule. And it includes summary level activities or work packages, and we'll get more detailed as the contractor starts coordinating with the subcontractors. It typically includes summary activities such as mobilization, demolition, excavation, foundations, erect the building, roofing, rough and finish MEPs, interior finishes, commissioning, occupancy, and closeout. So it's kind of a quick schedule. Often you see this during pre-construction while the contractor is putting together their baseline schedule. It just gives everybody an idea of roughly how long the project's going to take, and these things are all done in phases. Um, it's kind of a milestone. Just simply shows you where each one should start and should finish. The total duration of those group of activities. The baseline schedule. This is a low level, high detail schedule. This includes much more detailed tasks that are needed to complete the work. It's usually developed by the contractor with their subcontractors' input. It typically includes detailed tasks such as, form foundation walls, install rebar, place the concrete, cure strip forms. It gets into much more detail of the physical work than the milestone, which just kind of gives you foundation as one big package. These can be cost loaded and used as a method of payment. So what you can do is you can break down tasks and you assign dollar values to them, and then when you take the whole schedule, it equals the total cost of the project. So every time the contractor completes work, he gets paid for that. It's very difficult to track. I'm not going to get into a big schedule class on that, but I've seen it done effectively. A lot of times it's a requirement in the spec and it's completely avoided, and everybody just sticks with a standard baseline contract and schedule values, which we'll go over that later. Then the schedule updates. This is usually happens monthly. This is the when the contractor updates the baseline schedule to reflect work that has been completed, usually as a percent complete, and will also include any impacts and changes that may have developed over the past month. The baseline schedule must be approved before any updates are prepared. And then I have a little bit more information this when you get to part 8. Part 8 is part of the part 2 of this series when I talk about construction. So we'll talk more about that then. Then there's some other types of schedules. Again, these are the ones that you see a lot too. I've used these a lot. 60-day schedule. So this is something. It's a low level, high detail type of schedule, which includes details and activities that the contractor plans to perform in the first 60 days of the project. It's a truncated version of the baseline schedule, and this allows the contractor and the owner to have clear understanding on which activities will be performed and allows the contractor time to assemble his baseline schedule. It also helps both the contractor and the owner with their cash flow projection. So basically, you could have a project where you're going to have 2, 3, 4 months of earthwork. And the contractor really wants to get going, but he's still trying to buy out some of his subcontractors related to the building. So sometimes you'll let them get a head start by giving you a 60-day schedule because all the activities are earthwork related and they don't really impact the building. That allows them time to um, get the baseline schedule in much better shape. The key is to make sure that you kind of draw the line in the sand somewhere that they need to give you a baseline schedule at a certain point. Don't let them drag out too long, but it is a helpful tool, especially when you got a lot of different areas on the site where you might have septic and water line and gas line, electrical, and all that kind of stuff. It's good because it'd be detailed out. You just don't want a milestone schedule that just says earthwork. It doesn't give you much detail, so you can plan accordingly. Plus, a lot of times earthwork is a very expensive part of the job too, so it allows you the forecast. So I prefer a 60-day schedule if you're gonna, if the project's at least a year long, and it helps keep things moving. The next one is the look ahead schedule. So this is a high level, low detail, truncated version of the baseline schedule. It shows which activities will be performed over the next 2 weeks typically. Um, this also allows the contractor to plan any efforts on their end as they will know what is being performed, um, as well as the owner. So what that does is, and I'll give you an example in a minute. What it does is I usually use it in a spreadsheet, kind of lay things out. We're going to do this on this day and this on that day. Um, and you can do it in week. I usually do 2-3 weeks at a time, and it's easy to follow than a baseline schedule because sometimes things jump around a lot, and you could have a 20-page schedule. This is more of a one-page document. Everybody seems to do these nowadays. It's no secret, but it is a useful tool, and I'll go through that in a minute. Um, but it does help you, and especially when you get to meetings when you have a lot of people and they're not construction people, it makes it a lot easier to follow and people understand it. The schedule values, it's called a schedule, but it's really not a schedule. It's a high-level detailed cost schedule. There's no activities per se. There are activities, but they're not interrelated like a schedule would be. They're more activities that'll be performed by each trade. Like you might have metal stud framing, drywall, tape and mud, and then sand and finish kind of thing, where you break it down into different things. So that way you can pay the contract accordingly. So it breaks it down the overall project cost and activities so that they can be billed accordingly. It's important that they're broken down into manageable and quantifiable line items and divided into materials, rough finish, and aligns with the baseline schedule. You don't want your your schedule and values to look completely different than your baseline schedule because then it's tough to compare the two. This is why some people prefer the cost-loaded schedule, because when you take the cost-loaded schedule and you update it, it basically you can extract out of it schedule values so the owner knows what to pay the contractor. But it's always a area of debate, and I haven't seen it used too often, but it is out there. So some schedule examples. So first, a milestone schedule. So this is something I did on a project. Just shows you a quick milestone of a project. I don't get into every activity. This was a project that had multiple buildings, and it basically keep it simple. The first part you have site work, and it gets under underground utilities until you get to a point where you're at a foundation, and then it says that you do building one, and you do the exterior where you're doing the foundations and the framing, the roofing, the windows, and the trim, and then it goes into the interior where you start doing all your MEP trades and your painting and your finishing and your furnishing and all that kind of stuff, and then complete. So it kind of gives you a quick, what am I doing the outside, what am I doing inside? It shows two buildings being done at the same time. When one's done, it jumps to the next one, and that one's done, jumps to the next one. So on this one, I have several buildings being done at the same time. So it's a quick overview schedule, milestone schedule, just give you a rough idea when you're going to start a building, when you're going to finish a building. It doesn't get into every minute detail and every task in that thing. It doesn't include anything like inspections and curing times or anything like that. It's just quick and simple. How many days is it going to take to build a building? And then this is just kind of, I zoomed in and took some snapshots of the items. So you can see you got your notice to proceed, your mobilization, your procurement and stuff, and then when that starts, you start phase one. You do your site work, you're doing all your clearing and grubbing, underground utilities, placing fill. Then you start installing foundations. You get a binder in, and you got curbing and sidewalks. So you keep that moving. Then you get to your building one. Like I said, you get the exterior, then you do the interior, and then you're kind of done. So it's you get this house. This is a housing project. You're building this house in roughly 60 calendar days. And I believe this project was completed too, and it was built similar to this schedule. And then again, this is just some more buildings. So I broke it down by building. They all had a number, so I kept it simple, stupid. Another thing to do with schedules too is and you can see how I did here. You always want to make sure each activity is unique as much as you can. So you don't just say building exterior, building. You said building 3C, 7D, 11E. Keep things unique. It's just good practice. And then this is just a little bit more of it until you get to the project completion. So it's quick. People can see it, and you can update this well. as well and give it a percent complete and see how far you are if you wanted to. But it's a little bit difficult until an actual phase, if you will, is complete because it's all subjective because you don't have anything to as your measuring stick. Then you get into a baseline schedule. Again, this is something a little. This was a similar project. This one gets more into the actual activity, so you can see it's more detailed. So now you got when you get to the building work, you got the demolition and socketing. Then we put in some helical piles, and then we did some masonry repointing. Then we put in underground under slab utilities, and then we did the waterproofing, right? And then we put in grade beams. Then we did a structural steel, so you can see it's slowly growing out of the ground. Install your wood framing. And you can elaborate on this even more. You could take wood framing and do it in, line 1, line 2, line 3, inside, outside. You can make it as detailed as you want. This is just a simple one to keep for presentation purposes. I didn't want to get too detailed. And then you can see how you start doing your wood framing, your doors, siding, MEPs. You get your permanent power. Then you start your drywall, your doors and frames, casework, flooring, painting, finish your MEPs, and then you're done. So it's a little. This is a much more simple one. This is something you'd probably see in a house. So it's very simple. Again, I zoomed in again so you can see how the stuff kind of flows together. And then that's it. And then a 60-day schedule. So a 60-day schedule is just a truncated version. So what this would just be focusing on the first 60 days. So you'd have a schedule that I show here in yellow. Everything else would kind of just be one activity. Maybe it's the building, maybe just the site work. So you would issue a schedule similar to this and just keep what's in the yellow. And then everything after that would just be one activity or a phase, whatever you want. So you can break down the 60 days into smaller activities so everybody kind of sees where everything's happening, especially when you're doing a lot of site work and there may be a lot of inspections, or maybe there's things owners have to do, especially if you're doing a state or a town job where you have a lot of town inspections. Maybe the town has to connect something. You might have a town electrical company, not a utility company. So this helps you out if you don't have the full baseline schedule. You just do a quick 60-day. So that's an example of it. Then a look ahead schedule. This is a look ahead schedule example, and there'll be multiple slides on this. Basically, what I usually do is this started on April 1st. This is when I started to put this presentation together, so I started with that date. So you had previous work, previous week, nothing happened because we didn't start till full one. So this week is what I'm supposed to be doing, and then the next week is I put in blue. And the reason I'll go through this so you can see the color codedness, so it makes sense when I get to some of the other slides. So this is something you typically would provide at a project meeting, especially when there's a lot of owners or a lot of people that are not construction savvy. You don't want to give them a 25-page schedule to look at. They'll get lost. It's easy just to do something simple like this. So this would be your initial one. One thing I like to do is when I get to the next week, you can see that what was in this week, last week is now in the previous week. And if it happened, great. I gray it out. Then you got the green this week, so you can see how things shuffle down. And then the blue, again, is next week. And then the orange, I did this because it hasn't hit the schedule yet. I just did this just to show you the comparison when I get to some other slides. You typically want to put things on there that aren't on your schedule. It might confuse people. I did that because you'll see how this works when I get to other slides. Now you're moving down, you notice things change color. So things that were blue last month, let me go back in green. So if you look on the left, you'll see install forms, line 1 in A. Those are green, and blue is next week. So I color coded this for a reason. You don't have to do this if you prepare one. You can if you want. I did it just to show you how this moves. And then you'll see that all those items in gray, there's 3 of them. When you get to the subsequent week, now you can see now the 6 items in gray. And in theory, the ones above you'd probably drop off because, again, somebody might ask. So you'd probably take those first 3 activities off because they were completed the week before. And then you can see the items that were blue are now green, and then you got a new set of blue. So this is how it evolves. So if you were to take, a whole 2-week schedule from the beginning of the end of the job and you were to shuffle it kind of like a deck of cards, you would kind of see these things kind of move from left to right. So that was my intent here, just trying to explain it so you can see it in action. And then here you go again. You can see things, you see all these activities gray, so they're slowly getting finished. Green is this week, blue is next week. So you would keep moving. Owner furnished items. So why are these important? So what is an owner furnished item? So these are items that are to be purchased and delivered to the job site by the owner. They often include things like office furniture, any specialty equipment the owner might use, any specialty machinery they might use, and they will become part of the finished product. So when the project is built and completed, these are items that are going to be part of it. This also can include proprietary items, which are often prohibited in state and federal projects. Usually because of public bidding laws, you can't have proprietary projects in your spec. So what the owner will often do is if they really want something, they'll buy it themselves. The owner must decide whether they want the contractor to install or if they want to install on their own when they prepare their bid packages. So if you're going to furnish something, you need to tell the contractor that I'm going to give it to you, you're going to install it. So it's furnished by owner, installed by contractor. That's the proper terminology. The benefits, it includes cost savings because there's no markup on it. Control and availability, so you can control when you get it and if it's available. Quality insurance, you can buy whatever you want, and then flexibility. These items should be identified in the contract and included in the baseline schedule. So you want to make sure that if you're providing something, the contractor has it in his schedule. Even if you're installing it, he needs to give you access. So he needs to put in a schedule, this piece of equipment furnished and installed by owner, he's got to give you a window. So he has to be able to tell you when he's going to be ready so you can install it. So it's critical that the owner purchase these items as soon as possible and provides the contractor with delivery dates so that the contract will be ready for him. Whether they are installing them or having the area ready for the owner to install. Successful implementation requires careful planning, clear documentation, and can be a win-win for both the owner and the contractor, leading to a successful project. So you can have owner's furnished items. You just got to make sure that the owner knows what they're doing. I had a project where the owner was furnishing furniture. This is a federal project, and it became apparent really quick into the project. The owner didn't even know they were supposed to. So it became a very hot item because the owner not only had to buy the furniture, but they didn't have the funding in place. So long story short, it took them almost a year to get the furniture. So it was a phase project where they were supposed to have furniture for phase 2. We didn't get phase furniture until we were in phase 4. So we had to displace a lot of people because the owner dragged their feet on the furniture. So it happens. All right, that's it on schedules. Continue on to the next lecture, which will be lecture 4 on drawings.